everybody. I'm Regina Bryan, and welcome to the Women of Empowered Living. And today I have another dynamic, spectacular woman I cannot wait to introduce you to. Although some of you may know her. She is one of our community members and ambassador. She's also a member of the John Maxwell team. And I am thrilled and delighted to have a conversation with her today. Everybody, Donna Heinz. Hey, Donna, how are you?
Hey, Regina, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I really appreciate it. So excited to get to talk with you today.
Oh, that's great. I'm excited to talk with you. Now, first of all, where are you joining me from today?
I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
And I love that even your background, your virtual background has a little Albuquerque, New Mexico kind of feel.
I know, isn't that cool? I got some mountains behind there, and I should have put some snow in there since we got a little bit of snow, but it's melting. So, it's pretty accurate.
Oh, I love it. Donna, what I love about you and our time when we spent on the phone chatting is we have some things in common. And I just didn't know that. We both grew up with military fathers. My dad spent 31 years in the Navy, and we lived mainly in Virginia and then Florida. We did a brief stint when I was 13 years old in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And you have a military father as well, and that sort of directed some of your life. So what was it like, and what branch of the service was your father in?
Yeah, so my dad served 30 years in the Air Force, and that's all he ever wanted to do. And he had a great career. We moved a lot. I moved every 2.5 years growing up while we were doing his career. And I was actually born in Germany, and I graduated from high school in the Panama Canal. So we were primarily stationed in the South, but I kind of started in one country and ended in another country.
I love that because, you were always like the new person at school. Oh, and yeah. So many of our friends were intrigued that we moved around because we met people, and I'm sure you have too, that have never moved, that lived pretty much in the same place their whole lives. And you and I, especially you, we had opportunities to meet other people. And I don't know about you, but I just think it's been a wonderful part of my life, having not lived in one place.
Yeah, I was very shy when I was young, so it was hard for me in the beginning. But looking back on it, I got to see and do so many things, to meet so many people from so many backgrounds, that it really shaped who I am today. And I'm very thankful for those opportunities because it really gave me a broad perspective of the world.
I love that you're saying that because that's exactly how me and my two sisters, and even though we're both, my sisters and I, the three of us are different people, we all really believe that same thing, that thank God we had a parent that was in the military, because we love our country and we're so proud that our dad served. And just like you, it gave us this broad world perspective and introduced us to new things. But for you, it also landed you in the military, so to speak. Was it the upbringing? Was it your father's way he was in the military? What captivated you that you too went right behind your dad and followed in his footsteps?
Yeah, I wish I knew the answer to that. My dad, when he was young, always knew he wanted to go in the military, and I was the same way. My brothers, not so much. My brothers didn't really want to have anything to do with it, although they both did go into the military as well. But I'm the one that really just intuitively and in my gut just said, that's the right place for me. And I fought to do it, even though at that time women weren't, a large part of the military.
Because what time frame are we talking about, Donna, when you entered?
Yeah. So I entered the military in 1985, but I entered ROTC at a military college in the early 80s, in 1980. Women had just started being accepted in those positions, had just started in the academies. And so let's just say we weren't always well liked where I went to school.
So talk to us about that, because you're talking the 80s and you're a woman going into a military academy. So tell us a little bit about that kind of life.
Yeah. So I went to Texas A&M. Texas A&M actually let women in their ROTC before the academies did. The Air Force Academy, West Point, they actually went to Texas A&M to see how they integrated women so they could learn from the lessons that Texas A&M had. And so I went to that military school that's ripe in tradition. And of course, it started as an all male school when it first began, and the women civilians weren't even allowed in the school until, until like the mid 1960s and so forth.
I did
So
not realize
we
that
were,
Texas
we were,
A&M. I didn't
yeah,
realize that about Texas A&M.
yeah. So it evolved over time in letting women in, even civilians. And so I was one of 100 women in a 2,100 military outfit, if you will. And so we were a very small percentage. Of the women I started with, only 4 of us actually graduated.
Wait a minute. So when you joined, there were 100 of you kind of starting this journey together over this college career.
Mhm.
And only 4 of you made it to graduation?
Yeah. So let me clarify a little bit. So there were 100 of us women in total. So that was all 4 classes, freshmen
Okay,
through
right. Okay.
seniors. In my class, there were 14 of us in the Air Force unit, and then there were like 20 something in the Army unit, and only a handful in each units actually graduated. 4 in my unit, and then probably about 6 or 7 in the Army actually graduated.
I mean, and how tough was it for you ladies to be integrated into what was that? I'm trying to imagine, and I just can't, going to a school where women weren't even accepted right away. And then so few of you were together, and then even fewer of you graduated. What was that like for you, Donna?
Yeah, so it was an interesting experience. Let me put it this way. The men were tough on us, and the women were tougher on us, because you had to be perfect. To get accepted, we had to be perfect. We could do no wrong. And so there's a lot of pressure. I started college when I was 17 years old. So that was a ton of pressure to be in that, and also trying to go to school and trying to learn at the same time. But I got to tell you, I am very thankful for that experience, because it got rid of my shyness. I am no longer shy. I know how to speak up for myself, and I know how to take care of myself. And yeah, it toughened me in some ways, but it got me from being an introvert, and I turned it into an extrovert very rapidly for survival.
That's
And so I'm
really
thankful for
amazing.
that. I'm thankful for that, because that's now given me opportunities. That's what's made me successful in the military, was the fact that I was not afraid of anyone or anything, and could speak my mind.
You know, I think about when you said you were 17 years old, starting this whole new journey, being in this military college. And I was 17 years old, going to college also at the University of Florida. And I think I cried the first week because I couldn't find all my classes. And it rained. It was, it was Central Florida. So it rained like every afternoon in the late summer. And I thought, this isn't for me. And then I'm listening to your college experience thinking, I don't think I would have made it.
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny that you talk about that. So let's just say one weekend I would call home and I'd be crying, just like you. And then the next weekend I'd be calling, saying all these great things that had happened. And I found out later, my mom would always tell my dad afterwards, so we should tell her that she can come home. She doesn't have to stay there. He's like, oh, no, let's wait for next weekend and see how she is. And of course, everything would be fantastic, right?
That was a good strategy on your parents' part. So at graduation time, you just decided that you were full on military. What were your next steps after graduation?
Yeah, so after graduation, and actually before then, I worked on a military base as an intern during the summers, doing contracting and negotiating contracts. And so I was like a gopher, learning things in the background there. And so I put all that on what we call our dream sheet when you go into the military, of what job you want to do. And they saw all that experience and put me in that career field. So I was really happy about that. So I got to go in and be what they call a contracting officer, and learn how to negotiate contracts for the Defense Department. Sometimes I was doing contracts that kept the base running. And sometimes I was doing contracts on weapon systems.
Oh my
God.
Yeah. Wide variety of contracts you were working on.
Yeah. And you know, the funny part is, one of the people that educated me in my internship on those summers, he was actually one of the leaders in my very first unit I went to in the Air Force. I didn't know that when he met me at the door when I arrived. I was scared to death. I didn't know anybody, and he was standing at the door and was like, "Hey, Donna, how you doing?" So it's nice to have a friendly face on that first base that I went to.
And so did you stay in Texas, or where did some of your work in the military take you?
Yeah, so I didn't serve overseas. I actually did go through the South as like my dad. I was in Colorado, I was in Massachusetts, I was in Ohio. I moved every 2.5 years as well. And my last job in the Air Force was fascinating. I got to see all the logistics processes that the Air Force has, and I traveled around the world. Every 2 days, I was in a different place for 4 years, and I was investigating how the processes worked, figuring out where they were broken, and then we would go back to the Pentagon with a report, and we would talk to three-star generals and say, "Sir, here's where your process is broken. Here's how we suggest fixing it." And we would leave that on their plate, and we would leave and go on to the next project.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
God.
great job and a lot of travel, a lot of travel.
I bet you really enjoyed that.
It was, but I got to tell you, there toward the end, when you're in a different place and in a different country every couple of days, I was starting to wear out. I literally did that for 6 weeks, one time every 2 days in a different location to include 3 different countries.
Oh my gosh. The learning experience, though, I'm sure was tremendous. But you're right. After a while, you're like, okay, this is old. My body doesn't know where I am any longer.
Yeah. We were sitting in a pub in England, and it was the last part of our trip, and I was sitting with 2 gentlemen I was traveling with, and all of a sudden I just saw white. I just felt like I was going to pass out, and I told them, I said, "I'm going down, I'm going down." And they were like, "Oh my God," I survived. They took me back to the hotel, and every hour on the hour they were knocking on my door. "Are you okay? Are you alive?" And great guys to travel with. But yeah, after that, I knew that I just couldn't travel that much.
How many years did you serve total?
So I served 20 years.
So career, you were career military
I was,
person.
I was, I was just like my dad. That's all I ever wanted to do. That's what I felt I was built for. And I just absolutely loved it.
Wow. And so when you left the military after 20 years, I mean, and you're still a young, vibrant woman. So now it's time to start that next chapter. What was that like, those first steps from military life to civilian life? Because my dad was still youngish when he retired, and it
Mm.
was a hard transition, I have to say. He didn't know what to do with himself sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, I saw my dad went through the same thing after 30 years. He was still young and vibrant, and
Mhm.
he had a hard time finding work. And I watched his struggles. I luckily had an easier transition. When our dads went through transition, they had no services to offer, nothing to help them with that transition. They were literally on their own. And I think both of our dads lived it, right, and breathed it like oxygen. That uniform was like oxygen to them.
It
And so
really
they
was.
did.
I mean, that's the
Yeah.
only life my dad really knew as an adult. He was 17, 18 years old, and right after high school, he left his town in rural Lynchburg, Virginia. They were
Mhm.
very poor, and my dad was the youngest of 5 boys, and he decided to have a different life. And so he signed up for the Navy and never looked back and traveled the world. But I mean, you're right. My dad got out after 31 years, and he just didn't know what to do with himself. And I think one time he ended up being the full-time babysitter for my little nephew and my sister had her son. For a while, he was like the stay-at-home grandpa, babysitter. But yeah, our dads did have a struggle, and you had an easier time, but probably not the smoothest transition because it's not that easy, is it, to go from military to civilian?
Yeah, it's really not. And I found work really easily. I actually found a job 4 months before I even retired. So
Wow.
they waited for me for months to
And what
show
was
up
your
to that
first
job.
job? What was your
So my
first job?
yes, my first job was at SAIC, Science Applications International Corporation. I was hired as a procurement director, and I
Fancy
supervised
job.
about yeah, I supervised about 10 people, and they were nationwide. So once again, I actually had people in about 5 different states and locations I was monitoring. And
Wow.
I was supervising and overseeing about 500 subcontracts for that company, doing Defense Department work. So it was something I was familiar with.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a big, huge job, and they waited for me, right? So the expectations were super high. And I found out really rapidly that what was going to make me what made me successful in the military wasn't going to work in the private sector.
That's
So,
fascinating too, because I think until you and I were chatting, and then I was thinking about my dad, you forget that they're worlds apart. That military world and the civilian world that we know. I mean, I've not ever been in the military. They're just worlds apart. And so, tell us a little bit about what that first job was like, the bridging the gap and the getting used to civilian life.
sure, sure. So I had become very aggressive in a very positive way in the military, right? And that's what makes a military officer successful. I found out on week 2 of my private sector job that that'll actually get you fired. I did not get fired in that position, but someone certainly wanted me to be fired. So I was,
Struggled somewhat.
yeah, we were actually in a conference room on a phone call with the vice president of the company, talking through some things, and I was learning what was happening. And I just didn't like how he was treating my team. And I let him know it on the phone and told him that we would be hanging up if he wasn't going to treat us properly and with respect. And let's just say that when he got back to the building, he went and found my boss and wanted to know who I was and who I thought I was. And he wanted me fired on the spot. And my boss was like, no way. We waited for her for a long time. We need her skills and capability. And that gentleman a year later actually was my biggest cheerleader and wanted me to get promoted to the top contracting position in that company.
So
There in that location
the man that came back to the office and said, "We got to fire her right now,"
right
a
now,
year later became your biggest supporter.
my biggest fan.
I
Uh,
bet
he,
that made you
he,
feel amazing.
yeah, he liked my aggressive ability and my capability once he saw what I could do for them. But it was interesting, and I was just simply trying to take care of my team and make sure we were treated properly. Going
Yeah.
back to, my time in college, right? I told you I wasn't going to take anything from anybody, make sure I was treated properly for the rest of my life. And so,
Is
uh,
a great attitude, a great skill set to have. How long were you at that first job?
yeah, so I was there for a couple of years before I actually transitioned to a new position. And they were going to promote me into a higher position. I was going to travel even more. And I was just burnt out from the 2 jobs of lots of travel. So I found a new opportunity where I could learn how to do commercial contracting. And so I
Wow.
actually took a downgrade in pay to go to a smaller company to learn how to do commercial contracting. And when I left there, they were like, hey, if you ever want to come back, you're always welcome here. And I'd never seen them actually say that to anybody else. So I learned how to dial in and be adaptable in that new environment, which was really different than a military environment.
Yeah. So, what have you noticed through your process of transition, or some of the really tough pieces for military people to sort of bridge coming into the civilian world? What were some of your challenges, and what are you noticing?
Yeah, so we're really used to teamwork and we're
Hmm.
used to working as a team and developing as a team and encouraging each other as a team. And I found that in some of the companies I worked in, while we were a team, there was still that individuality and that there's that still the I mentality of, hey, if someone else doesn't do it, I'm going to do it and I'll run over you in the process if you get in my way.
Wow, which is
And
really in
so
contrast to the military way.
yeah, I miss
Yeah.
that teamwork. I missed it so badly, especially that second position where I was going to learn commercial contracting. Oh my gosh, what I didn't understand is it was the aircraft industry. That is a highly competitive industry, so competitive that the competition is within your company, not just outside your company. And so I didn't adapt to that very well at all. And I quickly left that position and actually went back and worked with another contractor who was working on base so I could go back to the military environment of teamwork.
Yeah, I guess you just found that you needed some sort of connection
I
to that
did.
military lifestyle, because it can be cutthroat and competitive in the civilian world.
Right. And the only position I found similar to that in the private sector was a company working on a military base. And then that landed me back into civil service and back working for the Air Force. Within just a few months of working with them, the government discovered me and discovered my background and actually called me on a Saturday and said, we would like you to come back to work for the Air Force as a civil servant. And I was like, why would I want to do that? I love this company. Like, this is the best company I've worked for so far. And they informed me that that contract was ending and that my job would end as a result. So I needed to come on board with them.
And you
So I
did
spent
that.
I spent the last decade working for the Air Force as a civil servant and
Wow.
transitioned right back to the private sector here in the last few months.
So are you still at that same job now, working civil service for the Air Force?
For the Air Force, no, I did an early retirement from civil service after doing that for 11 years. And so I am now retired from that. And I actually was going to go full time into my coaching, and a company knocked on my door and said, we'd like you to come work on a project with us. And I was
And
like,
so you're doing that work right now. Talk to
how
us
does
about
that?
that.
Yeah, it's like, how does this keep happening to me, right? It's called networking.
You keep trying to cut
Um,
the apron strings, Donna, and it's not
I
happening.
keep trying and no one's letting me, right? So anyway, I went to work for them, and I'm now trying to shore that up and quit that and leave that behind so I can do coaching full time. So I work for them 4 days a week, and I work for myself at nights and the other 3 days a week in my coaching business.
So
At the end of this month, am hanging that up, and I'm going full time into my coaching business.
that's so awesome. So now let's backtrack for a second. You're a coach and a speaker. And so when
Mhm.
did you join the John Maxwell team?
So I joined the John Maxwell team in 2019.
Very recent.
I was in Washington, D.C. at the time. I spent the last 3 years in Washington, D.C., serving in the nation's capital. And I went to a training program one day in the Pentagon. That was John Maxwell's 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And that instructor was so dynamic. And I just saw myself doing that. And I've actually always had that desire to do that. And finally, it just awakened in me. And I was like, I've got to do this. So I actually joined them and actually started doing John Maxwell classes in the Pentagon and on the Air Force bases in the nation's capital for the
Wow.
last couple of years.
So what was that like? You took John Maxwell's material into the Pentagon.
Mhm.
And how was it received? What was your experience like there?
It was amazing. People really loved it. And I loved the classes because you would have people that had just entered the Air Force all the way up to, senior officers. And so it was great training dynamic that we had there. And a whole group of us just decided we wanted to do this. And we all became John Maxwell team members, and we all started doing the training. And I actually went to my boss and I said, I'll do the work you need as long as you let me do this in the afternoons and part-time, and I can travel around and do these classes. So he did. So I did my contracting as fast as I could. And then I started doing nothing but the training for
Talk about a
everybody there.
win-win deal.
It was awesome. It's called reinvent your position. If you're tired of your position, just reinvent yourself inside your position.
Really, like you just gave the roadmap to doing that. Like, I'll do whatever work you need me to do. Just let me do this also in the afternoons or when my work is complete. That's so great. So what are you focusing on now? You want to leave your position, which you will be at the end of the month, and to focus on the John Maxwell materials, also your coaching business. It says Donna Heinz Consulting. Who will you mainly be serving in your business?
Yeah, so I'm going to do as a career transition coach, since I know how to transition and adapt to new environments.
Yes, you do.
Having done that 100 times right through my lifetime. So I'm going to serve as a career transition coach. And I'm actually doing it now. I understand that military community. So right now I'm looking at helping the military community. I've got a number of clients already that I'm assisting. And I really am going to start a podcast and things for women veterans, because I feel sometimes the women veterans kind of get left behind still.
Mm-hmm.
And some of their needs are a little bit different than the men's. And so I want to talk through that and help them. So that's what I want to do. And I really want to kind of help them adapt their skills while they're serving so they can be successful in the military, use those same skills to easily transition like I did, i.e. have that company waiting for you to arrive instead of, you trying to find some work, and then helping them be successful afterwards. Because if you can develop those skills early, use them in transition, and then use them in the new job, you're going to be far more successful.
I really love that, because as we've been talking, both of our dads were military men and had hard time transitioning. And I talked to a young lady the other day that I may even have to connect you with because she's former military. And I believe what you believe about the military people needing this help transitioning, and especially women. So what are some of the things you're doing right now? Are you already offering classes and consulting and coaching services?
Yeah, absolutely. So I recently became certified as a digital career strategist.
Hmm.
So one of the courses that I'm offering and will offer monthly is a LinkedIn course. So in that course, I teach you how to build a profile. I teach you how to connect, engage, and build a viable network on LinkedIn. And I was taught by a recruiter. So I know how recruiters use LinkedIn. I know how hiring managers do that. I've been a hiring manager myself for about 15 years. So I know what to look for in a resume and so forth. And I know what makes you successful. And so I help with that. And because I have that knowledge, I can help you find a really hidden job market inside LinkedIn, so that you can really tap into the types of positions you're looking for. So I have a course right now. Again, it's a 4-week class that starts at the beginning of every month. They'll be starting again in March. I'm having my last class in February tonight with my students. And so by the end of that class, you have a LinkedIn profile. You have more than 500 connections. You already know how to engage and are engaging, and you're already tapping into the hidden job market. So my current students right now have so much opportunity just in the last 3 weeks from attending that course. I also help them with their resume as part of the course, that now they're turning down opportunities because they have too many opportunities to choose from.
So you have really discovered a very important niche by
Mhm.
serving those who've served our country. And I'm just, that gives me goosebumps right there that you're really, I mean, you're truly using every bit of what you had as a military person, as a John Maxwell team member, to serve those who served our country. What are you finding as you're working with people that are transitioning? What do you find are really some of the hardest hurdles to overcome?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, people are in the military are kind of isolated. They don't really explore the outer world a lot. So they don't always know that their skills are transferable to many, many different types of work. And I was just talking to a lady the other day. She served 23 years in the Air Force, doesn't know if she's ready to retire or not. Once I listened to her and saw her skills and saw what she really loved to do, I opened her eyes to like 4 or 5 things that she could do that would be interest to her. She didn't even know they existed. And I sent her where to go read up on them and see if that was something of interest to her. And so just kind of opening their eyes to all the different possibilities. Just like me, I jumped right into contracting, something I did because I knew how to do it, like the military taught me. But I got to tell you, it's not what gets me out of bed in the morning. And I'm tired of doing it, right? And I spent 16 years trying to find my why and really making good money, but not really doing what was getting me out of bed in the morning. So I want to help them make those connections. So
Uh,
just being able to open her eyes the other day, and she was like, wow, there's really those things exist. And I'm like, yes, they do. And
and
you can
that's what gets you out of bed in the morning, I'm sure.
right. And then I'm working with a couple of gentlemen right now that through their military background, they're actually now wanting to go into information technology, and they're getting bachelor's degrees in it and other certifications, but they haven't really totally worked in it. And so they're navigating that. And there's so many great programs that they've been able to take advantage of to gain some internships, some skills, and now going into it. And just a little bit of honing on their resume really opened those skills up. So it's just fun to watch them kind of come to life and realize the adventure that transition is.
I love
Not,
that.
yeah,
The
because
adventure.
yeah, a guy reached out to me on LinkedIn yesterday and he said, Donna, give me some advice on how to transition. I find myself in this terrible predicament after 23 years in the military. And I'm like, you're not in a predicament. This is exciting. Like there's all this adventure in front of you, you know? So trying to help them change their mindset that you're not in a predicament. You're not going to go without work, but it's going to take a little bit of work to find what's right for you.
I think that's probably key is that's probably one of the biggest hurdles you're discovering is the mindset that something's
Mindset.
lost when they leave the military, like when our dads left and they didn't know what to do with themselves. And you're able to show people through technology and just through the whole world changing since then, that they really do have many options ahead of them. Something that you said, so if we know military people in our lives right now, you're saying that they could even start working with you before they get out of the service.
And should.
And
And should. You need to start 2 years early.
2 years?
2 years you need to start. So
And
if you don't start at that 2-year point, you're going to be behind the power curve. And never do it alone. Always do it with somebody, whether you do it with me as a coach or someone else. There's so many resources. Just if you don't go it alone and you start early, you're much more successful.
well, I am really glad that you said that, because I thought early might mean 6 months.
No, you need to start 2 years early. And I even want people to start earlier than that. I want to teach people how to be financially secure while you're in the military. Some things you might need to think about. I've got people on my team that will help with that. I want you
You're
to
like a
go to your
one-stop shop, then, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
For anybody making that transition, man, woman, younger or a little bit older, that you can get, they need to get someone on their team like you and your company. And you can start a plan for them financially,
Exactly.
career, and that mindset piece that's so necessary.
Absolutely, absolutely. And developing those soft skills, learning how to speak, learning how to connect, learning how to communicate, because that'll help you build a network, that'll help you find jobs, that'll open up so much more to you. I've only applied to 2 jobs my whole life. All the others came to me. I never applied, I never sought them out, and I got great opportunities from my network because
You
people
had a
saw
recent,
something in me, they
you-
connected me with it, and I had jobs before I even wanted to go find a job.
and you shared with me, so I have to share this, because you
Mhm.
shared with me that you recently, I think in the last year, maybe around COVID or coming out of last year, you had a great job opportunity that you turned down,
Oh,
because this is your why. So
exactly.
if you know anybody, we're going to get to that. If you know someone that needs to transition from the military to civilian life, I mean, Donna Heinz is who you want them to work with. Donna, what career did you turn down, or what position did you turn down to do this that you love most?
Yeah. So going back to mindset, I needed to prove to myself I was still competitive inside the military and inside the
That's that
government
DC
environment.
personality style, by the way.
I just had to prove to myself that I wasn't out the pasture yet, right? So I I applied to a program and was accepted. And it was a super, super competitive program. And I was picked up for civilian strategic leadership program. And as part of that, I was then offered a position right when COVID hit. I was offered a position to serve on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So I was going to be a division chief on the Joint Chiefs of Staff and get to see the real inner workings and deal with the White House and the National Security Agency and some really big, high, powerful people. And part of me was like, wow, it'd really be interesting to see how that works. And then I realized I'm only going to be able to affect just the 2 or 3 people I'm working around, the people I'm supervising. I'm only going to be able to mentor them. When I spent the last 2 years doing John Maxwell classes, building a coaching program, why would I want to do that and only impact 2 lives when I could impact many more lives? So I, for the first time in my 16 years after transitioning for the military, listened to my heart, stopped my limiting beliefs, and jumped all in and said, I'm retiring. Thank you for the position. Thank you for seeing something in me, but it's time for me to do what my heart's telling me to do. And then I move, I start to do that. And here comes someone knocking on my door. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do the job. Why not? And I was like, Donna, what are you doing? You left the Joint Chiefs of Staff to do the coaching. So I'm finally listening to Paul Martinelli and listening to Danielle and Nika and all those people that have helped me in the last 6 months during COVID, all the training I've taken, going, yes, I'm going to jump in and do it. Because if I can't jump in and do it, how can I show someone else to do it, right? So,
I
yeah.
think I just think that's the coolest story. And when you told me that, I was like, I have to say that, because that just shows, number one, you are really competitive. And I love that. And number two, that it wasn't about the prestigious job with a great salary for you. At this point in your life, after being a John Maxwell team member, a member of Empowered Living, you're following your passion. And
Yeah.
we
And
need,
it's always been there. It's always been there. I mean, from an early age, I would watch motivational speakers and I was like, I want to do that, and I always thought I didn't have anything to say, so I couldn't do it. And I was good at speaking and I did it and trained for years. I trained in the military too. I traveled and trained on how to do contracting. Um, but now that I'm older and I have this life experience and I've transitioned so many different ways, Daniela finally woke me up to realizing, what I had to offer and the people that I could help in the military, and why wouldn't I want to do that? And so, yeah, it's just, it's taken me 16 years to get there, but I now realize I do have something to say, have something to offer, and it's helpful to others. And that's just where my heart's been for many, many years. I just didn't let myself do it till now.
oh gosh, Donna, that so resonates with me, that I know that resonates with some of our audience members, because it's easy to think I don't have anything to say and why would someone hire me? And you are the living, breathing proof. You really are, of following your heart, following your passion. You are now practically all in with this, listening to Paul, listening to Danielle and Nika. You really do have a gift for this. And our military members that work with you and their families, and everybody's going to be benefited by the impact that you make. So I'm really excited to watch this unfold for you. And as we wrap up our interview, I want to ask you this question that we love to ask everybody around here. What does an empowered life, living an empowered life, mean to you, Donna?
I think living an empowered life to me, kind of on what I was just saying, is really just watching others grow, watching others light up. I just started a mentoring program for military spouses, and they're trying to get back into the workforce, and just being able to show them, to do what you love, and don't let anything else get in your way. Don't live how I've been living, like live how I'm going to live now. To me is empowering. So to me, an empowered life is really just giving back and watching other people light up and other people grow. And that just brings so much joy to me. And that makes me feel empowered to go keep doing it and keep helping other people. And so that to me is what an empowered life is all about, is helping others and giving back where you can.
Donna, that's so beautiful. And I am really, really glad that you had this conversation with me today. You have made an impact on me. I am excited that others got to hear your journey and your story, because I know it will impact their lives too. Thanks so much, Donna, for sharing today. I appreciate you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Until next time. See you soon.